Here's a sentence that cost my student 4 of the 20 marks in her C1 advanced essay last week, enough to drop her from a C1 down to B2. But can you spot the problem in 5 seconds? If you missed it, stay with me, because in the next 8 minutes, I'll show you the 3 moves that rescue those points, and you'll get the chance to practice them with me too. Here's a quick reminder about how Cambridge scores their writing marks. You can get up to 20 marks for your essay, which is the first writing task, and up to 20 marks for the second task in your exam. So put those two 20s together, you can get a maximum of 40 points in the writing exam, and then Cambridge uses this scale to convert those 40 points to Cambridge exam marks. If you get between 160 and 179 marks, you're scoring in the B2 range. And if you get anywhere from 180 to 199 marks, well, that's C1. 200 plus marks is C2, but a lot of students, when they send me their writings, they kind of hover in the 170 mark range. But these are the 3 moves that will help you ladder up to C1. If you want my eyes on your essays, every Thursday you'll find the details for my 4-week speaking and writing intensive exam preparation course in the description below. But first, let's go back and fix that sentence. Now, the very first line of your essay in your introduction should give a broad fact, a general statement about the topic of your essay, but it should also give a hint about your final opinion. So the examiner already sees the direction that your essay is going to go in. Let's have a look at this exam task. It says, your class discussed introducing a 4-day working week. Factors mentioned: employee well-being, company profits, and national productivity. And then we have the same instructions as always. Write an essay between 220 to 260 words for your tutor, discussing 2 factors and explaining which is the most important for most people. So here's a typical B2 introductory first sentence. Some people think a shorter week is good for staff, while others think it's bad for profits. Now, this is not terrible, but it doesn't really tell us what direction the essay is going in. Now, let's have a look at the stronger C1 opening statement. Burnout costs companies millions every year. So a 4-day week looks like an easy win for staff well-being, even though many bosses worry about lost revenue. Now, this first sentence is better because not only does it give us some important information about the topic, which is the 4-day working week, but it also tells us what the student thinks. It tells us what their opinion is, which is great for improving essay organization and clarity from the very beginning. So to sum up, your first sentence should always be a general statement about the topic of your essay, but it should also have a clue about what your final opinion is going to be. And that's going to create a nice link from the very beginning all the way down to the end of your essay. A great way to get those organization marks in your exam. Now, every main body paragraph, so not your introduction, not your conclusion, but the 2 paragraphs in the middle should follow a simple structure. P-E-E. Point, example, and extra information. Now, this is great because it means nothing that you write moves off topic and everything is relevant, which is going to help you with your content marks in the exam. And this is why you must plan your essays before you write them, so you know exactly what you're going to write before you actually write it. Now look at this example for part of your main body paragraph, which talks about employee well-being, which is one of the factors in our essay. Firstly, a shorter schedule can boost employees' mental health. Now this is great, the student has made their point, but there's no information about how a shorter schedule can improve their mental health. So now we want to know why. For example, in Iceland's 4-day week trial, reported stress levels fell by 1/3, while rates of absence dropped sharply. Now, even if this is a completely made up example, we have proof, we have justification to support the point we made before. So everything is relevant and everything we're writing is supporting our main idea. Now let's add some extra information. Good health means fewer sick days, so the company gains as much as the staff. And we can keep going with our second paragraph. We might introduce another point and say, however, profits don't have to drop just because the week is shorter. Now we're talking about company profits. And let's give some extra information because the examiner's thinking, but what do you mean the company's not going to lose money? I need to know why. So then you might say, companies that have tried a 4-day schedule often keep the same output by changing long meetings for quick check-ins and focusing on priority tasks. And maybe we can give some extra information just so everyone really understands what we're talking about. And we might say, this shows that what matters is how time is used, not simply how much of it is spent at work. So, time for you to pause this video, open up your Cambridge exam notebook, which I hope you have, and write the following strategy: PEE, point, example, explanation. Now, let's add a few advanced structures to show range, but there's no need for us to sound like a textbook. We do not want this to sound unnatural or forced. So maybe we can try using an inversion in one of our sentences. Instead of saying staff rarely perform at their best when they are constantly exhausted, we can do an inversion and say rarely do staff perform at their best when they're constantly exhausted. Sexy grammar, sexy results. You might also try fronting in a sentence, which is where we put the most important information, the thing we want to focus on at the beginning of the sentence. So instead of saying output per hour, not hours on the clock, is what really matters, we can change the order and say what really matters is output per hour, not hours on the clock. And you're using a C1 grammar structure. Another great C1 grammar structure you can use to improve the level of your sentences is by using a participle clause, a present participle, maybe a past participle. And instead of saying the 4-day work week is often framed as a win-win reform, you might say, framed as a win-win reform, the 4-day work week could reset our idea of productivity. So we put our verb in the participle at the beginning of the sentence. Now, if you're thinking, Izzy, I have no idea what inversions, fronting, or participle clauses are, that's fine. We're learning something new every day, so take note of those 3 grammar structures and you can explore them after this video. But let's have a quick reality check. A lot of students try really hard to make their essay sound as fancy as possible. They try to use all of these advanced grammar structures, the most formal vocabulary that they know, and 2 things often happen as a result. The first thing is sometimes those essays don't sound very natural. It can make them difficult to read, and that can really affect your communicative achievement marks in the exam, which also grade you on how readable your essay is. So when in doubt, make sure that it's easy to read and easy to understand your essay. A second problem we often see is that when students are trying these advanced grammar structures, they don't really know how to use them properly, and as a result, they make a lot of mistakes. So if you want to use C1 grammar in your essays, make sure you feel confident before the exam on how to use them so you're not making lots of mistakes on exam day. You could end up losing 3 or 4 of those 20 marks if your essay is full of mistakes and it's not very readable, which in the end is enough to drop you back down to a B2. So, when in doubt, keep it simple and clear. Accuracy beats wrong, fancy English any day. Guys, today we learned the importance of an opening generic statement, which also has a hint of your final opinion. We talked about the PEE strategy, point, example, extra information, and we also talked about 3 language boosters. Now, if you master those 3 things, you really will move from a B2 mark up to C1 in your writing.